Ladi Thompson is a security consultant. Bukola, you have the next one.
Yes, indeed, Jeffrey. And the next one is just as critical, but I couldn't take off of my mind Reverend Ladi Thompson's position that it is Nigeria's responsibility to salvage Africa. That's a huge one. Speaking of, solutions, let's head over to a very critical conversation, which we started about 2 weeks ago on this this particular truth table, what I love to call truth table, detecting illicit financial flows. And just recently, Nigeria was delisted from the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force. And this is a seminal turning point in Nigeria. In fact, the Minister of Finance has lauded this as repositioning Nigeria to play in the global economic space. So let's reflect more on this. And joining us on this segment is the General Counsel, Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, Mr. Felix Obiamalu. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mr. Obiamalu. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Bikola, and thank you for having me.
Indeed, it's good to have you. I'd like to get straight to
my pleasure.
The role that your agency played. But before that, I think what is just as critical is the emerging dynamics to this designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern. We've seen in the papers today that Chad is closing its border because of the worry of attack by the U.S. And we've also seen worries about investment. How does this impact on the progress that has been made in the delisting of Nigeria from the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force? We're now supposed to have been moving forward, to play globally in the investment field. But how does this new challenge impact on that progress?
Thank you very much. Well, first, I will have to look at it from a professional point of view. Yes, the listing came with a lot of positive impacts on our global perception and economic prosperity. However, the recent events coming from the United States government seems to have also reduced the positive effect of the delisting. However, our response should be from the area, professional angle, that it's a call for us to intensify our fight against extremism, violent extremism, banditry, kidnapping, and organized crime in general. What we are going to intensify our collaboration with other agencies to ensure that we make the Nigerian space safe for Nigerians and all residents, notwithstanding their religious beliefs, whether they are Christians, Muslims, or traditionalists. We are going to secure our space and let the world know that our space is secured. With that, investments will come. With that, investors will, confidence will grow. But presently, we are doing well. The listing from the grey list of Nigeria has a very significant impact, and it's a statement, a pronouncement to the world that Nigeria has adopted effective measures to secure our AMS, CFT, CPF ecosystem. Thank you.
All right, just before we get to the issue of the grey list, I'm more interested in bringing the nexus between what is playing out now and what the NFIU is doing, Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. And the relationship here for me is the combating terrorism. At the heart of what the United States government is saying, although the language seems to be more of a kinetic approach, take these killers yourself or we'll take them out for you. That seems to be the language. But if we come home and do some housekeeping, efforts have been made. How significant are they is debatable. And that has to do with terrorism financing, which is what I want you to speak to. As I looked at the Nigerian Sanction Committee list of terrorism financing people that have been identified, one of the things Nigerians have always said is, if there's a list Why are they not well prosecuted? So you need to help us clarify, because I can see the list, I can call the names of the people here, but you already have those on your table. Because if there are people financing terrorism that gives our country a bad image, that's on the higher level, on the one level, and then continue to kill our people, and there's no strong action in terms of the judicial system to make sure either they end up in jail or they are killed through the court process when they are found guilty, probably paying for the capital punishment, then we have a lot on our table to do. So walk us through, for us, what exactly is going on as far as the issue of combating terrorism financing in Nigeria is concerned. When was the last time that list was updated? How many people are there? Has there been classical prosecution that we can reference?
Yes, thank you very much. I will start from the what you said about kinetic approach. Now, for us to actually effectively combat terrorism financing, terrorism as it were, and the financing is an aspect of it, we have to adopt both the kinetic and the non-kinetic measures, which we are adopting in Nigeria. The work of the FIU basically is to ensure that we cut off the financial network of these terrorists, because it's the finances that gives life to the work of the activities of the terrorists. So from our angle, we identify, identify and cut off their financial links and networks, which we've been doing effectively. And then we disseminate intelligence to the law enforcement agencies, those who are mandated to be on the field, the kinetic part of the process. And then they investigate, apprehend, and prosecute. And then for the judiciary, there has also been a lot of communication and capacity building for the judicial arm to also understand the nature and configuration of these. So there have been a lot of prosecution and convictions for terrorism and terrorism financing lately. A lot of them have also been on the news, and it's one of the considerations by the FATF in the course of removing Nigeria from the grey list. It's our impact and the effectiveness of our mechanisms. We have shown consistent and sustained progress in that field. And yes, for the sanctions committee, we meet quarterly, and the designations are not just what the Nigeria Sanctions Committee do. It's just one of the activities of the Sanctions Committee. And designations come when there are persons who have been identified for designation. There are criteria for designations. So that is the position we've been designating as the occasion arises. But most importantly, we've been combating it on the field, both kinetically and non-kinetically. We've been aligning intelligence with covert intelligence with overt actions to achieve the result. And we've been making progress. Yes, you say the jury is still out as to how far our progress has been. But I know that even at the international angle, we are collaborating with other nations. We are part of the Sahel region and the Lake Chad task force that is combating terrorism financing and terrorism, as it were. Thank you.
I'd like you to speak to two issues that I'll quickly follow up on some of the things that you have said in response to Jeffrey's question. Jeffrey asked for a list. For instance, we have a sexual offenders register, that is operated by NAPTIP. Isn't there supposed to be sort of a list, for public naming and shaming for those who are responsible for the maiming and killing of people in our communities? That's on the one hand, because the president did acknowledge that over 100 terrorism financiers had been prosecuted in the last 2 years, but the president didn't name names. That's on the one hand. And on the second hand, what is the challenge in the deployment of technology to trace terrorism financing, particularly for banditry and kidnapping and insurgency in Nigeria's northeast, northwest, north central? Why is it a challenge, when we have data, we have NIN, we have, BVN, and there's money flowing through in the supply of weapons in these routes? So why is technology not effective in this space? Because if it is, indeed we'll see the results. But what we're seeing is terrorism trickling down even further down the North Central.
Thank you. First, I won't agree with you that technology has not been deployed in combating terrorism financing, because we at the FIU, we deploy a lot of technological tools. In fact, so to some persons, the FIU is a tool, a technology tool itself. So what we do basically is to track and detect the flow of this financial network. And we apply technology. We use technology a lot. We have virtually automated all our processes. And for these designations, there's a Nigeria sanctions list. There are two lists. There is the international list under the UNSCR 1267 and 1373. They have the international list. And then we have the Nigerian domestic list. They are all publicly available at the Nigerian Sanctions Committee website. And also, you can also get all the reporting entities and stakeholders receive alerts whenever these designations are made. And then we also have the OFAC sanctions list. So these are all the lists that are available, and they are all publicly available. There is no element of not being able to expose them. They are all publicly available, and you can, those that deal with them one-on-one, especially the reporting entities, the financial institutions, and the near NVPs, they have been able to assess them and then mark them with the activities they do. For instance, transactions of persons on the designation list are tracked and their assets freezed. And then we use technology to track them too. Some of these designations come out of the result of the use of technology, because when you apply technology tools to the identification and tracing, it makes it easier, it makes it more certain, and it yields positive results. That's what we've been using, and it has shown effectiveness.
All right. Let's expand the conversation further. We can keep you for 1 hour because there's a lot you need to help us unpack, and there are layerings to it. But let's talk about politicians and the issue of stealing our public funds as far as the issues are concerned. I have looked through the list, the Nigerian sanction list. I've seen the names when it has to do with terrorism, anti-terrorism, and all of that. But I know that the NFIU has a broad mandate in terms of watching the space and how money flows. But what is my concern most of the time is the fact that we can see that there are leakages in the system. We cannot deny the fact that there's significant corruption among the political class, but we hardly see them behind bars, no matter whether it's a governor, a senator, and all of this. So how does NFIU monitor politically exposed persons? That's on one hand. How come we don't have as many politicians behind bars as they should be? Because we know some people who had nothing and they become whatever they become in government, and they become super rich, and they can explain their way out of it.
Thank you. First, you know, in this industry, and for convictions to arise, they need to be evidence, empirical evidence. I need to start from the base. First, the jobs, the mandates are differentiated. At the FIU, for instance, we are intelligence driven. Our job is to generate the intelligence. We look at, we actually have a PEP list. We have a PEP list, and there's also CBN and all the other reporting entities. They also have their own PEP list. So we know who the Money Laundering Prohibition and Prevention Act 2022 listed the qualifications or criteria that will make you a PEP. So we have a PEP list, and persons who are either new customers or old customers with transactions are usually run through the criteria to know if they are PEPs or not. And when they are PEPs, there's an enhanced scrutiny on their transactions. But we need to also know that being a PEP is not a stigma. It doesn't mean that you're a criminal. It's just that it's a notification that there are some enhanced measures that will be deployed against your transactions. So having said that, the FIU generates, receives reports from the reporting entities, they analyze it and generate intelligence. It is this intelligence that is being disseminated to actionable intelligence that is disseminated to the law enforcement agencies depending on their mandate, and then they investigate. After the investigation, prosecution comes, and then convictions. So again, I will always link it to the removal from the grey list in the course of the process where we deployed our mechanisms to address the deficiencies that were highlighted by the FATF. These things were cross-checked by the FATF themselves. The number of disseminations of intelligence and the investigations, the prosecutions, as well as the convictions. So there are three parts to it. The dissemination of intelligence by the FIU, which gives rise to investigation. The investigation by the law enforcement agencies, and then the prosecution and conviction. Now you see, for prosecution and conviction, you have two arms, the law enforcement or the prosecuting arm, that's the Federal Ministry of Justice, as well as the courts. So it takes interpretation of the laws by the courts, the conviction of the courts for a convict to be convicted. But again, I don't think it is quite correct to say that there have been no convictions. There have been convictions. People have been convicted. Yeah, but if there are specified persons that you're looking at for to be convicted, then I don't know. But what I know for sure is that there have been prosecutions, and some are ongoing, some have been convicted, and some, because when the case gets to court, the court looks at the evidence. You cannot be the prosecutor, the judge at the same time. So when you arrive at the point that there's enough evidence to prosecute and you submit the matter to court, you do your best, and the rest because is left to the court for interpretation. So there are some also who were discharged and acquitted by the court, and that implies that the evidence we have is not enough to sustain the charge. But yes, there are room for improvement. There is also need for the judicial timeline to be reviewed, because it seems that it takes ad infinitum for some prosecutions to be concluded. But we are making progress. It may not be that significant to some observers, but I know that we are making progress, and that the system. Now, on the issue of corruption, if you look at our national risk assessment, corruption is high. It's high. It's a high risk predicate crime. So we are addressing, because all we do is risk-based. So we are addressing that. We have that at the back of our minds. We are addressing that. And then also, because the FIU is not just an intelligence organization, we are also a sort of a research institution. We do research studies, and into trends, patterns, and we generate products, strategic products, like typology reports. So those reports contain the trends, emerging trends, new trends, dynamics of the crime. And then we also issue advisories, guidelines, and then notices, as well as executive alerts. The advisories we used to advise, we issued one recently on Ponzi schemes, where we alert the public on what they should look at. And then guidelines when we need to put a stop to certain things. We all know when the FIU issued the guidelines from them, prohibiting the cash withdrawal from
the scope of the FIU, the scope of the FIU is expansive. You had begun to talk about Ponzi schemes, and that's another area entirely. But let's stay with terrorism financing, and I'm glad that you referred to the point that there is indeed room for improvement. Of course, the weight of the work of the FIU cannot be discountenanced. If we refer to the number of prosecutions and convictions that we have seen. But the point is that the tracing of illicit financial flows and terrorism financing is directly related to the security challenge that we're seeing. And so if you say that the deployment of technology is effective, there's a question mark there, because we can relate it directly to, the security challenge that is continuing in the country. We're seeing mass killings and, the sophistication of weapons that these terrorists are wielding. that is a lot of deployment of funds. So that's why I'm saying that, why is the deployment of technology not effective in tracing, the work of the terrorists in Nigeria's north? That's on the one hand. I'd like you to now speak to the concern about the movement of financing in public sector corruption, which is also directly linked to, real estate, particularly in the federal capital. We've had this conversation on the program earlier on. What is the finding of the NFIU in this regard? Is there any significant progress beyond what we have seen last year, the mass estate that the EFCC discovered? Is there anything else that the FIU can tell us about public sector corruption and its links with real estate?
Thank you. First, again, I will push back. If you insist that the deployment of technology has not been effective, I will urge you to cast your mind back to some years when there have been a lot of bombings and terrorist attacks that even the roads, some roads were barricaded. And what we have today, that the targets have reduced to soft targets, and you see that there has been a progression in effectiveness from what we had the years past and now. And most of those are because of the technology that we deployed. Yes, I agree that there are rooms for improvement, but you know that it's not something that you just go out one day. There's no magic wand that you wave and all the terrorism will just be wiped out. So we are making progress, and it will be good to acknowledge the fact that we have made some progress and that we need to increase working. We need to intensify. We need to strengthen our use of technology. And then you also know that when you talk about technology, they are resource intensive, and also there's also need to capacitate to be able to effectively use the technology. So these are also some of the issues that you also take into consideration in arriving at whether or not there is effectiveness. But when the Global Standard Center looked at it, analyzed it, reviewed it, and say, yes, we have shown effectiveness, I think we should applaud ourselves. And then for the improvement rooms, we ensure that we narrow it. Again, the FIU sits at the intersection between national security, financial integrity, ethical consideration, and economic development. So our work is quite expansive. But it does not mean that we are being overwhelmed. We are not. On the issue of public corruption, I spoke earlier on about
if I may comment, because of time, my sincere apologies. So the reason why we're you're doubling down on the issue of public corruption is to the effect that, because we're not saying there has not been conviction. We're talking about how many of the big fishes, if you will, have had to go behind bars. That's why, because there's no deterrent to bad behavior. Even the American president, who is the president now, was found guilty on 34-count charge in one of the states in America, but I don't know how their system works. He still became president. So perhaps you're doing your work as FIU, but down the value chain of how this is supposed to end up getting the kind of conviction you want, it didn't end up well. It's either you didn't do your work well or the system botched your work. It's one of those two. But we appreciate what you're doing. And in appreciation of what you're doing, help us to maybe give us the current top, what do you call it now? The top threats in terms of money laundering. Which areas or which sectors has FIU seen to be where, whether in the private or the public officials, used to drive and launder money the most? And what is provided for in the law for whistleblowers who can help the agency do their work more effectively?
Okay, thank you. Again, I will refer you to the National Risk Assessment. The top three risk predicate offenses we have are corruption, terrorism, and then drug trafficking. So these are the top three. And for sectors, yes, the DNABP sector seems to be the most vulnerable. And the DNABP sector also extends to the real estate sector that your colleague mentioned earlier. And we have done a lot of work in that. We have tried to also build the capacity of operators within that sector to be able to detect suspicious transactions and those transactions that will be reported. And they have kicked in. They are now corroborating. Again, on the issue of the system, the coordination and corroboration strengthened by the IMC and the FIU has also ensured that we have built a sort of tight, watertight working mechanism, corroboration-wise, in that when intelligence gets to the investigative body, they investigate and prosecute. And then we also try to build the capacity and educate or enlighten the general public and also the judiciary. We have a lot of programs with the judiciary where we try to show them the dynamics, the emerging trends and growing dynamics of these crimes. So I urge you to look critically at what has been done and the result of those, and you will see that we have made some progress. Yes, as to the big names that are being prosecuted, there are a lot of factors that may account for the delay in the trials, but they are all legal because, for instance, when they go on appeals, the appeals get up to the Supreme Court and then you come back. This takes time, it takes years, but then the process, we are engaging, the process needs to be certified. The Administrative Criminal Justice Act, the AJA, has tried to manage time for criminal prosecutions. And so some provisions of the Money Laundering Act 2022 has also made the judge the master of his court and enjoined them to try as much as possible to ensure that trials are not stultified, trials are smooth and fast. Again, the law enforcement agencies and the NFIU, we continue to collaborate, we continue to hold training sections and build our capacity to do our job more effectively. That's all I can say. For the big names, the trials are ongoing, and when they conclude, we will see the result.
All right. We hunger really for more results because names have been mentioned as being linked to terrorism financing behind closed doors, and sometimes, people have dared, to come on television and say that indeed certain people in government know about terrorism financing. So we'd like to see the big names if indeed money is being moved in very questionable areas. But we thank you for your work and we appreciate what you're doing. We've been talking with the General Counsel, Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, Mr. Felix Obiamalu. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And from here, we head on to another critical conversation. The state of nation, begs questions about the responsiveness of the administration, particularly in key areas. So we'll be back for this next one after this.